Welcome to Sideline Sisters, where we empower women in sports one conversation at a time. We celebrate the women who make the WNBA legendary while providing our unfiltered thoughts and analysis on the game. Winsider is expanding its network to include more diverse voices that are knowledgeable and passionate about the WNBA. Hear from the women who are redefining WNBA coverage and hoops talk.
I'm Jasmine Harper.
And I'm Paige Pedraza, and you're courtside with the Sideline Sisters. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sideline Sisters. We are your co-hosts, Candace Pedraza and Jasmine Harper. Jasmine, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good today, Ace. The WNBA season is right around the corner. I believe we only have about 2 or 3 more weeks until everything tips off. And then a bunch of good things happening with Winsider. Personal announcements coming out soon. So I'm just excited to get into the second episode and kind of see the lay of the land before the season tips off. What about you?
Yeah, same here. Getting off of going to the draft. I am like so antsy for the season to actually just get started. I am tired of mock drafts. I'm glad those are done. I am tired of guessing what's going to happen on draft night. Now it's just looking forward to seeing how training camps shake out, how rosters are finalized, and like just getting the season started. Because I feel like this year is going to be pretty absurd just because of the talent across the board, across all 13 teams. That's probably the most exciting part about it. There's an extra team now to watch and look forward to seeing compete. Speaking of the draft, we could dive into the WNBA Draft, which just happened. Our last episode, we were talking about what we expected to happen, just what we were looking forward to most in the process. Now that it's over, it seems like things were pretty predictable in the first round, at least in that first 1 through 3 slot, or maybe 1 through 4. Obviously, Paige Bueckers, we kind of knew was going to go first, so that didn't feel like a shock. But she went first, of course. That was awesome to see. And so that was awesome. And then just seeing everyone's fits. I feel like every year I'm like, there's no way that last year's carpet could be topped. And then this year I'm like, oh my God.
It gets better every time somebody takes the orange carpet. It's insane, honestly.
It was wild. Shout out Anissa Morrow because she looked like straight out of the Matrix and it was awesome. Like her whole fit.
Isaiah James, shout out to you, sister. I need your loctician's number so she can also do my hair. But the fit head to toe, it was just a vibe. I really loved her energy that night as well. That night was pretty cool, and I'm so happy that like you got to go and a couple of other people from Winsider. We should have content soon out about that, hopefully. But how did you like the draft? It was in the Shed in Manhattan, which is different from the usual location. So what did you think about the draft overall before we dive in?
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, the Shed, I had never been there. I'm from New York, and if you're from New York, you know there are certain areas of New York City where you're just like, you have no reason to be down there because it's just either very touristy or just like very out of the way. This was a pretty centrally located venue, which I thought was really dope. I had a lot of tourists coming up to me while I was waiting to get in, asking what was going on and explaining it to them and them being very excited about it. So many, little kids especially coming through and like their UConn jerseys and whatnot was very cool to see. And it was in Hudson Yards. And that's why I say like it's a spot that like if you're from New York, it's just like very weird. But the Shed was a very cool venue nonetheless. I thought that it definitely met the moment. It was a pretty organized event, I would say. The only thing that I wish we could have done just from a media perspective has been able to actually view the draft from the actual room where it was happening. But totally understood that, that was definitely a special moment for family and friends that were there to see players get drafted. Fans that got tickets to the actual event, of course, needed to have a good view of the event happening. But would have been very cool to be able to like capture the energy of the room. I believe Owen Pence, who is one of the writers with Winsider, he actually somehow managed to be in the room and capture some clips and whatnot. Not to call him out and get him in trouble, but he was definitely there. So that was dope that somebody was able to capture it. Um,
In case,
yeah.
in case you all don't know, when it comes to the WNBA draft, media is kind of in the room where draftees go after they're announced on stage. So the media doesn't necessarily get to sit and watch the actual draft. They're kind of there to get the sound bites and everything for after a player's name is called. So just wanted to point that out.
Oh, yeah. And that was really cool, at least because that was the first time I was able to sit in the media room and in the press conference room as picks came in. I think the best parts of the night were later draft picks, honestly. So maybe when the front rows were thinning out a bit in terms of media sitting to watch players speak, seeing the excitement on these players' faces when they were drafted in the second and third rounds really made the night very special just because obviously, like I said, we knew Paige Bueckers was getting taken. We knew the big names like Sonia Citron and Kiki Irifen and, Anissa Morrow and players like that. We knew that they were going to go in the first round. But players like Caitlin Chen, seeing her get called, and Gina Auriemma actually came into the press conference room to watch her and Aubrey Griffin talk about getting picked when they were just there to support Paige Bueckers in her getting drafted. And so that was amazing. That was really awesome to see. And
Yeah,
just,
I hope
yeah.
that's a tradition we continue. Kate Martin was in the crowd. She got
Yeah.
drafted to the Aces. Love her, miss her, tear, tear, tear. And now you have Caitlin Chen going to the Valkyrie. So hopefully next year we get to see that for somebody who goes to the draft and ends up getting picked, which they never thought would happen. And we can actually kind of dive into the meat of the WNBA draft. And what are some picks that caught your eye throughout the night, being selected to certain teams?
Yeah, I think that hearing Golden State pick Yochite, excuse me, in the first round with their fifth pick was very surprising because I really could have sworn that they were going to try to take Anissa Morrow because they could really use a post player of her caliber. And so for her to not get taken, and then on top of that, Yochite might not come over. I feel like there's like some, up in the airness about that pick that might make it feel even more so kind of like a question mark when it comes to the Valkyries roster construction. I don't know how competitive the Valkyries are trying to be this season. I would not blame them if they weren't trying to be super competitive this season and if they were just more so trying to feel each other out um, than anything else. And so that pick makes sense in that respect. But I would have liked to have seen Anissa Morrow kind of get a franchise, you know what I mean? And just be kind of like the face of it
Mm-hmm.
alongside Kate Martin and Tiffany Hayes and stuff like that. Like that would have been very cool. But
Mm-hmm.
that was the one. That was the one that definitely surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, the thing about Connecticut, and we'll dive into training camp rosters later a little bit. But as far as Connecticut, they really only have 4 people with protected contracts. That's Marina Mabrey, Tina Charles, Yvonne Anderson, and Olivia Nelson Adota. They also have Diamond the Shield signed and Lizzie Allen, but they're unprotected contracts. And quite literally, aside from JC Sheldon, also, everybody is either a draft pick or a training camp contract. I don't think Connecticut is going to be a top of the pack team anymore, especially with the departures of Alyssa Thomas and Dewana Bonner. So I'm very interested to see how they kind of pivot this season, especially with how their roster kind of is right now. They really have a lot of decisions to make about 8 potential spots, maybe even 6, I'll say. Um, and that goes on with the Golden State Valkyries as well. I don't see them competing to be like a top 5 team this season either. But I do think they have some really strong personnel on their roster that can, carry them into the future. I love Kayla Thornton. I love Tiff Hayes, love Kate Martin, Monique Billings as well. So I'm just very interested to see how they go. And Timmy Feck Benley, I believe she's over there after
Mm-hmm.
being taken during the expansion draft. So I think both teams have like a solid foundation. It's just kind of this, I'll say this season is not the season for um, trying to build a specific team because next year, once the CBA is kind of ironed out or whatever by the end of this year, next year will be very impactful and players might see a lot more movement across the league during that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And Connecticut, I thought that they had a really solid draft for what they're trying to build out, like you said, for the future, but they're definitely not looking like a team that's going to be trying to grind out a lot of wins no disrespect for like Marina Mabry, for example, who's a veteran on the team who maybe is in a situation where she doesn't want to be with Connecticut. We don't know because she did request that trade a couple of months ago, but it seems like that's quieted down a bit. I also saw TikToks that she was doing with the rookies that the Sun took. So it seems like she might be happy to maybe stay and, kind of guide that class on the Sun now. But yeah, between the Sun and the Valkyries, I'm very curious to see how their two strategies sort of play out. More so with the Valkyries, especially because, like you said, they have a really fun group of veterans on that team in combination with a lot of rookies that could end up being pretty high floor players for them, especially towards the future. So, yeah, this should be interesting to see how they develop.
Yeah, definitely. I think one team or one pick that kind of stood out to me was Haley Van Lith to the Chicago Sky. The Sky are kind of guard heavy, but they also don't have too much room in the front court as well. So I'm very intrigued to kind of see how this goes because Haley, of course, will be playing behind Courtney Vandersloot, but they also have Mariah Jefferson as PG as well. So are they trying to, kind of keep Haley for the future? Kind of like how, if you don't follow me on Twitter, it's okay. But on Twitter, I was saying that the Chicago Sky shouldn't have traded the number 3 pick for a veteran unless it was somebody like super impactful who could really just skyrocket them to being the championship team this season. And I thought it was really important for them to get a younger player who you can pair with Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso, and over time just nurture that big 3 so that when it comes time for them to take the reins of the organization, they kind of be a little bit more comfortable. But the Chicago Sky, they traded that number 3 pick for Ariel Atkins. Not too mad at the trade. I believe that Ariel is a really good player. And I think that Washington has kind of ran its course post 2019 championship vibes. So I'm not mad at Ariel for just taking the last year of her contract and going somewhere different just to see what the market is like. But in terms of Haley Van Lith, I'm very interested to see kind of where she fits into all of this. Chicago also has 4 players with protected contracts. So arguably, they're locked in Ariel Atkins, Rebecca Allen, Mariah Jefferson, and Rachel Bonham. But then you have Courtney Vandersloot, Kia Nurse, Michaela Onyenwere, Elizabeth Williams, and a whole bunch of training camp contracts. So there's also Kennedy Carter, who's not signed to anybody, and her last stint was with the Chicago Sky. Don't really know if they want to bring her back. So I'm very interested to see how that roster pans out because I don't think they were the biggest losers of the draft, but I definitely think that outside of Haley, they probably could have went in a different direction to be a little bit more competitive for now.
I agree. Totally agree. I think that Haley Van Lith, obviously, I think that they had to, not that they had to, but if the pick made sense from the perspective of, okay, you have chemistry with Angel Reese, you guys have a working relationship. With LSU, you guys were really solid. Let's try to build upon that chemistry with the Sky and see what we could also unlock between Haley Van Lith and Camila Cardoso. And that makes sense. But like you said, then why go out and sign Courtney Vandersloot and have Mariah Jefferson on the roster as well if you kind of know that you're leaning towards taking this player who very obviously has to have that PG role because we saw that she wasn't hitting, her ceiling with LSU in a different role in the backcourt. She kind of has to have the ball in her hands. And so that confused me. I feel like Chicago is kind of, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Chicago ever because I feel like they have the obvious winning formula, like to go alongside Angel Reese, or like they have the ability to do so to pair her with players of that caliber, but like they just don't. Like I feel like I'm losing track of like what I'm even trying to describe with Chicago because they are just such a confusing. They're
it's a
confusing
confusing time right now. Yeah, it's kind of like they're one of those rosters, which we probably should have took a look at theirs in a deeper dive. But honestly, I think 1-year rentals. I just think that's what Chicago is kind of going for right now. And they're going to take all the rentals they can get. If there's business, they're open for it, and they're just going to welcome in people who want to be part of that organization. One positive thing I will say about Chicago is the fact that they plan to have their new training facility opened up by the start of next season. I believe it was supposed to be done this year. I don't know how they were going to throw that building up that fast, but
Yeah.
above my pay grade. So yeah, I think Chicago still has a lot of question marks, and I think the testament to we'll be seeing how they work together on the floor. I don't have any qualms about Courtney Vandersloot and Rebecca Allen playing with each other. Neither do I Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso. But when you try to put those two sets of people or those two sets of players together, and then also mix in a few role players on the court, not really sure how that's going to turn out. Last year, they pretty much exceeded expectations coming out of the gate, which I was very happy for them about, especially under the former head coach, Teresa Weatherspoon. Chicago really just kind of like made people believers out of them who didn't see the vision at first. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that again for this season. Tyler Marsh, kind of like Natalie, is coming from the Las Vegas Aces, assistant coaches turned head coaches. And I think that he can do pretty well with the personnel that he has. I'm very interested to see how he develops Angel and Camilla also, because we saw his work with Jackie Young, even though she's a guard. That is a very talented and skilled player in Jackie Young, who just from year one to now, she's skyrocketed, and I just appreciate her game. So I hope he's able to kind of bring some of that development to the Sky as well.
Absolutely. I think that Chicago will not exceed expectations again this season, but I think they're going to be better than what I think they will be just based on like the roster on paper right now. But I think getting Courtney Vandersloot was pretty big because she's a point guard that is going to only elevate the game of everyone else around her. Her time obviously had ran out with the Liberty after she contributed some excellent play for them, but she wanted a starting role. And if she's that hungry still for starting minutes, then I can't imagine she's going to be anything but solid for Chicago. And so I'm excited. I'm excited to see how everyone develops there, just with the amount of youth that they have on that roster. But we could, I guess, transition from thinking about big picture team in relation to rookie stuff and more so into rookie in relation to team stuff. So fit between rookies and their teams, and just if there are any best fits that stood out to us during the draft that when we saw a pick made, we were like, yeah, that makes total sense. Was there anyone that stood out to you in terms of fit and just how they're going to end up meshing with the team, or even a bad fit that you were very questioning about when you saw it happen?
As far as bad fits, I don't think I have any at the moment. Dallas did take a lot of people in the draft, which they always do. And I hope that those young women are coming ready to work. We can get into it a little bit more in the episode, but that training camp roster is thick. And I don't know if Dallas thought through all of the personnel that they've signed to at least training camp and how they're going to have to really cut down on the amount of people that they have. I was hoping for like some sort of surprise, like, oh, maybe Dallas is going to take Dominique Malonga. Paige just ends up in Seattle. Because like from what I hear about Malonga, she really is a generational player. I mean, her wingspan, we talked about it last episode, her length and her size. I really think that she can do a lot. That player is probably the best fit that I have right now, mainly because of who she's going to have around her. I believe she's going to play center. So, of course, she has Ezzy right there next to her and NECA, but she also has the veteran leadership of Erica Wheeler, who's there, Skylar Diggins-Smith, Alicia Clark, Gabby Williams. I think they're really going to pour into Malonga because I think right now the W understands that development is key when it comes to these generational rookies. The Caitlin Clarks, Aaliyah Boston, Dominique Malonga, Paige Bueckers. Like, this isn't a time where you can botch some of these picks like they kind of have in the previous years. And there are a lot more eyes on the W ready to see a return on their investment from following these players from the college game or overseas game to the WNBA. So I really think Dominique Malonga in Seattle is really going to do wonders for her. I definitely like her better there than Dallas, but I would like to see Paige in Seattle, just taking on Sue Bird's former role, just kind of ushering in her new legacy. But, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
It's okay.
It's all right. But that would have been amazing had that happen. Maybe not amazing for like everyone who I'm sure had like a pre-write of like, all right, I'm just gonna hit enter on Paige Bueckers to the Wings, but it would have been fun. And yeah, ironically, I do feel like Dominique Malonga fits better in Dallas on paper, but she's gonna thrive just because, like you said, Seattle has like amazing personnel around her that'll be able to really lift her up and really raise her ceiling even higher than it already is. The one pick that I feel like made so much sense to me was Tahina Paopao going to Atlanta. That made sense to me in respect to just how bad Atlanta's shooting was last season. And I'm like, if they are really trying to lean into a 3-point renaissance with their new head coach, who was known for being very gung ho about 3-point shooting with Florida Gulf Coast, I believe, then she makes perfect sense from a roster fit perspective. Do I think that she's going to get a lot of playing time initially? Probably not, just because she is a rookie. And I feel like a lot of the rookies past a certain point in the draft have to really work to get onto the roster. And barring, obviously don't want to see it, but injuries and things like that, they're not going to get a ton of playing time. But I feel like her fit makes a lot of sense from the perspective of if she could keep up her 3-point shooting, maybe not from this past season with South Carolina, but over her career in college, then that makes a ton of sense, especially coming off the bench. So that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
I was happy to see her go there because she definitely fills a need for them in terms of just shooting alone. Made a ton of sense to me.
The only hesitation I kind of have about Paopao with the Dream is that they're already so guard heavy and they've already struggled to find a way to use Haley Jones. So I don't want them to struggle with trying to find a way to fit in Paopao because, like you said, she can be useful when it comes to 3-point shooting, but I do think she may be a little bit undersized to be in that backcourt with, I guess you could put her back there with Ryan at the 1, but like defensive wise, when you're going up against, a Chelsea Gray and Jewel Lloyd backcourt, like what are you going to do with that, So I just hope they can utilize her correctly and then also utilize the people that they had on their roster the past few seasons that haven't really been able to kind of like shape out and get enough playing time to showcase what they're really about.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it was just a very interesting draft, especially past that first round, because that's when we started to see more of teams definitely trying to either snag players that were falling or snag players that maybe weren't on folks' big boards or on anyone's radar. One pick that I was really excited to see was Aaliyah Nye going to the Aces in the second round. I thought that was really fun just because Sarah Ashley Barker, prior to Aaliyah Nye getting drafted, her teammate at Alabama, who had just gone to the Sparks, took time out of her presser to talk about Aaliyah Nye being like the best shooter in the country, in her opinion. And then a couple of picks later, she goes to the Aces. I was like, that's awesome. That's really cool.
I'll take it as an Aces fan.
There you go.
Shooters. I love me a shooter. Alicia Clark's sister, you did not have to leave us. We needed you. But I'm happy to see
is here.
Yeah. I'm happy to see a little bit more from her and learn about her game.
Absolutely. And the draft was just a few other notes about it. The draft, it was the second most viewed in league history. 2024 was number 1. It was also one of the, I think, most viewed sports drafts in general compared to other leagues like MLB and NHL, which is really dope. And I think that they've done an increasingly better job of definitely advertising and getting fans involved in the process of the draft. And Kathy Engelbert was there, of course, answering questions from the media before the draft even kicked off. She spoke about Unrivaled and expansion and the CBA and negotiations and whatnot. And she seemed to basically, yeah, she seems to basically not really want to talk about
Mm-hmm.
much about that last part, which was the CBA negotiations, which is, I
Mm-hmm.
understand, stuff like that is usually, I guess, kept to the negotiation table. But yeah, she was pretty forthcoming, at least when it came to Unrivaled, especially, which I thought was very interesting in her stance that she can't really extract much from Unrivaled to try to replicate or with the WNBA, which is understandable.
And they
Um,
shouldn't try to. Honestly, they
yeah,
shouldn't try to.
it wouldn't make sense just because it's 3v3 versus you know 5v5 versus 5
Mm,
obviously in professional basketball, and it makes sense that she was kind of not rebutting, but she was definitely pushing back a bit on folks asking if there
mm-hmm.
was anything to take away from it outside of, I'm sure, maybe marketing, just
Mm-hmm.
because Unrival's marketing was outstanding, and it
Yeah,
still is.
that's honestly the only thing that they can take away because it's like the play style, no, because it's 3v3. The refs, no, because everybody hated the refs.
Yeah.
Um, maybe the jerseys being available, but even still, that's a part of the marketing plan and just making sure you have those all of those like logistics lined up. I think Unrivaled is just doing what Unrivaled needs to do, but the W is also in like a rebranding stage. By the way, I'm going to school for this, so I know what I'm talking about.
Nice.
But they're in a rebranding stage to where they're trying to draw in like their target audience, which is women aged 18 to 34 years old. And that's not an easy feat to do, especially when the assumption is that a lot of women don't like sports. So the W really is trying to innovate. The commercials that they put out on draft night, I think it was a video, a highlight commercial, and they were like, "This content might be seen as highly offensive." And I turned around, I was like, "Who is this talking?" And it was like Asia Wilson shooting a three. Oh, genius! Yes, everybody should be offended by Asia shooting a three because she's going for her fourth MVP. Um, but yeah, the W is trending in the right direction. And I'm not mad at Kathy giving pushback either because with the growth of the WNBA, there's also some hesitations as well. A lot of information is becoming more readily available, but I think people forget that the WNBA is still very hush hush and they don't like to put a lot of information out there about the different things that they have going on. So for Kathy to address some things, hey, we are moving in the right direction because Kathy, from when I entered the league like 3, 4 years ago, wouldn't have said anything about anything. So take a win where you can get one.
Yep. She was definitely very it was funny. It was funny sitting in on that press conference, especially just from
Mm-hmm.
national media that was trying to definitely get quotes out of her, and it just was not happening. But I thought she was fine. And I think she also spoke to expansion a bit as well, which was maybe the only other interesting part of her press conference, and just said that there's been no real new movement on additional cities. But as we know from previous reporting, there are definitely cities trying to get in on trying to bring
Yeah.
in franchise to
Mm-hmm.
their city, especially Cleveland seems to be. Cleveland and Nashville
Mm-hmm.
were the two that stick out in my mind. But
Mm-hmm.
um, so that was the draft, and it was just pretty predictable in my opinion, but it was a lot of fun nonetheless. And it's going to be really fun to see who sticks with the team, and how training camp is going to go.
Yes, training camp actually starts the day after my birthday on April
Ooh,
27th. Yes, yes. So this should be pretty interesting because I'm just kind of looking down her hoop stats. Make sure you guys go visit that website to get rosters, salary numbers, CBA negotiations, quite literally anything that you need numbers for. Her hoop stats has it. And I'm just casually viewing like the different rosters. I'm seeing like 20 names on a 12-woman roster, and it's going to be very interesting to see the different cuts that the teams have to make. A few teams stood out to us during this process, and we're going to kind of break them down a little bit. So, for me specifically, the Dallas Wings and Indiana Fever have a very interesting training camp roster. So, in terms of the Dallas Wings, of course they have Paige Bueckers, but as we kind of talked about last season, does that really solve all of their issues? Um, on draft night and a couple of days after Arike Ogumawale was on social media and saying how the different guards that Dallas has drafted is probably going to help her extend her playing time in her career because she doesn't have to do so much anymore. And honestly, that caught me off guard, not in a bad way, but in just like a really good way to where, the consensus around Arike since I came in and started covering the Dallas Wings in 2021 was that Arike is a selfish player. But we've seen her evolve and trust her teammates a little bit more over the course of a few seasons. So at first, she had a really good core with Marina Mabry, Alicia Gray, Kayla Thornton, and Isabel Harrison when they all played on the same team together. And then there was like the new team that she kind of has now with Maddie Segrist and Tierra McCowan, but there's not really anybody still on the roster from like the past 2 seasons to kind of like, enhance it. They kind of moved on from a lot of people. So you do have Maisha Hines Allen, which adds some depth in the post. You traded for Dejanay Carrington. Arguably, you're starting small forward at that 3 position. You have Ty Harris, your backup point guard. I do have a question about how kind of Maddie Segrist and Alyssa Smith fits into all of this because Maddie, I feel like she could have been the most improved player last season, in my opinion. The trajectory that she was going on and the style of basketball that she was playing. She was almost like Satu in 2023, just like quite literally cleaning up the boards all over the floor, being the glue for her team. So it's like now that you have Paige Bueckers is arguably going to be the starting 1. Arike is going to be 2. I'm pretty sure they're going to put Dejanay at the 3. So when it comes to like the 4 and the 5, I'm assuming they're going to go Alyssa Smith and Tierra McCowan, but that kind of boots Maddie Segrist out of her starting spot, which I feel like she kind of deserved and worked for last season. But also with Alyssa Smith, who's also had some challenges at the 4 spot in Indiana, like if that fit doesn't necessarily work out, do you slide Maddie kind of in the starting role at some spot and kind of go like a little bit more smaller at the 4? Or do you bring Maddie and Alyssa off the bench with Ty Harris and see what the second unit can give you? What do you think about that, Ace?
I like the idea of sort of like a super bench for Dallas with Maddie Segrist sort of at the helm because I agree. She definitely deserves to get a starting role, but unfortunately for her, and through no fault of her own, Dallas has the top pick and they used it on who they should have used the top pick on, which is Paige Bueckers. So it makes sense that she would be the starter in that starting 5. With Maddie Segrist, I think she could definitely become a potential 6th player of the year candidate sliding to the bench. Absolutely. As long as she, is hopefully able to stay healthy for the season. I think that would be a great role for her. And it takes pressure off of her basically to have to perform at, not to say she can't, but to perform at an extremely high level as you would have to if you were in the starting backcourt. When it comes to Alyssa Smith, I think that unfortunately, I also don't love her fit with Dallas. I think that for depth, I understood acquiring her, but I don't quite see how she's going to fit with the roster unless it's maybe more so with the bench unit. I'm curious to see if she is still with the team by the trade deadline, just because I think if she doesn't kind of carve out a role with the team, that I could see her ending up becoming a part of a package for Dallas, especially if they're sort of on that cusp of getting into the postseason or they're in the race and running to be in the top 6 for the postseason. And so I think that they aren't necessarily as what's the word? I guess motivated to contend this season as maybe the Minnesota Lynx or New York Liberty or Aces are, but I don't think they're going to waste or try to waste Paige Bueckers' rookie season with Dallas, especially if they see that they can make a push to the postseason. But I mean, I do like Alyssa Smith's game a ton. It's just that she's inconsistent, and that's what concerns me about her fit with them.
I definitely see probably Maisha Hines Allen taking that starting 4 spot, which would be very great next to Tierra McCowan. And Tierra is also like another question mark. Personally, like I love the Dallas Wings girls. Having built some relationships with them over the years, I understand like how their game kind of works. In terms of Tierra McCowan, she's somebody who Vicky Johnson unlocked when Tierra McCowan first came to the Dallas Wings. I mean, it was crazy the amount of double doubles that she was getting within a game. Even Becky Hammond, called her a double double machine. But Tierra McCowan, under the leadership of Latricia Trammell, was a little bit more relaxed, a little less dominant, a little less forceful in the paint. And I just really want her to come out here and prove everybody wrong. Like, Tierra she could be probably one of the most dominant players in the WNBA if she really just gave that 100% effort. And that's not to say that she isn't giving any effort whatsoever, because it is there. But you can see the frustration sometimes on the court that she faces. She doesn't always get back in transition. And, you know, when somebody has an attitude, you can kind of see it all over their face. But it's like, at the same time, was Dallas in a position to kind of best use her the past few years since LT was the head coach? I don't necessarily think so. I think it's still crazy that we never got to see Kalani Brown and Tierra McCowan for more than a minute on the court together. And they played like, 2-3 seasons together? Like, that is insane to me.
I'm angry about that. Now you bring it up again.
It's like, how are we calling them the Twin Towers and never see them next to each other? Highly confused. But I also don't like to be overly critical of Dallas, because I feel like they're an organization who historically have been easy to criticize. You know, you don't have to look for the good in Dallas because people kind of already write the story for you. But I do think they have like some positives this year for sure. I think the relationship between Kurt Miller and the new head coach, Chris Koklanis, I think they're super close. And even with Jazz Thomas, who's now the assistant general manager, and then you have Nola Henry as an assistant coach also. But she's also a player's coach who knows how to do X's and O's, just winning a championship in Unrivaled with Rose BC. I think the culmination of all these different people are really just going to put Dallas in a better spot than they have been in years. I don't think it'll all be solved this season. Next season, definitely a little bit more interested to see what that roster looks like compared to this one. But I will say, as far as 2025, I don't see them as a top 5 team. Are the playoffs still top 8?
I believe so. Yeah.
Even though we have 13 teams? Okay. If the playoffs are still top 8, I might see them being like the 8th seed or maybe 7th. I don't see them not making the playoffs, but I don't see them clinching a high seed in the playoffs either.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm also very curious to see how their other rookies pan out. In training camp, you have Isaiah James and Maddie Scott, who I think both offer potential pluses to the bench alongside, as I already said, Maddie Siegrist. But that's a lot of smaller players off of your bench, potentially facing other teams' benches that have, bona fide 4 or 5s, whereas they might not have the size to keep up. Possibly the shooting, especially with Isaiah James, but not so much the size. So that would be a concern. But I'm very curious to see how they compete and if they're able to make the roster, especially Maddie Scott, who I think that she could offer some really great defense for the Wings off the bench. But unfortunately,
I also think Isaiah James finally gives Arike a chance to sit, a player who can run with the second unit. Because, like, now that I'm kind of piecing together the second unit, I see Ty Harris, Isaiah James, Maddie Siegrist, Nelissa Smith, and then whoever they want to put at that 5 spot. That's not necessarily bad. It still keeps you in the game and allows your stars to get some rest. But it's like, at the same time, I just have to see how everybody plays together, honestly. But I'm very interested. What about you? What's one team that you're interested in during this training camp season?
Yeah, I think Golden State is going to be interesting just because they're running this through for the first time. Head coach Natalie Nicase is definitely going to have her hands full with trying to piece together a dog mentality team, which I feel like it's kind of been like her whole mantra this entire offseason, is just trying to piece together a team of players that are going to fight for each other and grind out wins and things of that nature. I think that it's kind of interesting that they seem to lean more guard heavy in the draft and also just in the expansion draft too. And they still kind of need extra post players outside of Temi to add to the roster. But nonetheless, I'm super excited to see how Caitlin Chen fits into the equation. Obviously, she was a later pick, so I feel like with later picks, it can be a lot more hit or miss whether they're going to make the roster compared to pick in the first round. But I mean, there are plenty of WNBA players now that were undrafted or were drafted very late in the game and are consistent starters in the league. So that can't count her out. So Caitlin Chen, obviously coming off the UConn victory, she was a pretty big glue piece for them on the floor. And I think that she could be a great guard off the bench, maybe alongside Kate Martin. That could be a ton of fun to see. Um, Yochite, who the Mystics used their top pick on, their fifth rounder. I don't know if she's coming over to play in California, maybe, maybe not. But I think, reading that, she's gotten comparisons somewhat to the Liberty's guard rookie last year, who I'm completely blanking on right now for some
Are you talking
reason.
about Leia?
Yeah, oh my God.
Oh, how am I the Aces fan?
I know,
And
I'm like,
come on, Ace.
Leo Fibich, who I absolutely know, she has been compared to her a bunch. And so if she could slide in as sort of that wing shooter and also play great defense for them, that would be fantastic for them off the bench as well. And then Cheyenne Sellers, who I think that if healthy could be such a big key to their scoring as well on the floor. And she could definitely get to the basket a lot better than maybe Caitlin Chen could or Yochite could. But again, that's a lot of guards. So I just feel like there are a lot of cuts destined to happen, especially since the team already got a few pretty great guards in the expansion draft, like Tiffany Hayes as well as Kate Martin. You also have Kayla Thornton coming over in the expansion draft, and she was a starter with a championship team last year. So it's very likely she will come in and compete for a starting role as well. So Golden State is sort of rich in guards, but I think that they're definitely going to have to make a couple of pretty tough cuts by the time the season kicks off, just because it's too many cooks, unfortunately, in the kitchen right now for them.
Yeah. One thing that I will say about Golden State, I think that they have a lot of role players when I'm looking at the roster right now. Letitia Amir, who was cut by Atlanta. Very interested to see her game. Sometimes we don't get to see the full scope of a player's talent when they're on certain teams and they're not given the right opportunity, or the right opportunity may never come with a certain team. So I'm very interested to see kind of like how she fends for herself during training camp. Same thing with Veronica Burton. Carla Lake, part of Dallas, never got a chance to play. Yeah, I'm very interested by this roster. I don't think they'll compete for anything this season. I probably don't even see them making the playoffs per se. But I do think they have laid a good foundation, especially when it comes to players in between their second and fourth years who need to kind of establish themselves a little bit more. I feel like Golden State is the perfect place for them to kind of, find themselves in their new playing style with their new team and how they want to be.
Absolutely. And yeah, I agree. This roster is definitely very, very role player heavy. And But it is very interesting. They ended up taking a lot of role players from contending teams, which I thought was very smart on their part. Cecilia
Yes.
Vandelicini,
Yes. That was
cooking. She was absolutely obliterating the Liberty in the finals. And I feel like, and she was a big reason why the Lynx won the Commissioner's Cup as well, because every time the Liberty were getting kind of close to maybe closing the gap a bit, she was just hitting back, breaking threes like constantly. And so she's going to be actually, yeah, I agree. Definitely a steal and definitely an underrated addition for them. But yeah, I think all three of these rookies are absolutely going to have a decent shot at competing for a role with this team, especially since they, like you said, need to figure out what it is they're going to be, especially after the CBA and just beyond this season, which is starting to just feel like an either all in or not all out, but, kind of foot kind of already out the door season for some of like
one
the
foot
less,
in, 1 foot out.
Yeah, for some of the less competitive teams. But, and what is your second team that you're very curious to see their training camp?
The team that everybody's looking forward to seeing, the Indiana Fever.
Mm.
This roster to me, like, okay, walk with me. I'm not mad at the roster whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I feel like they have less cuts to make than everybody else. But how does it all work? So, of course, I feel like and Aaliyah Boston are automatic starters. Not even a question. It's really their team now. Everybody else is just kind of like, inside. But that also both the question, is it not Kelsey Mitchell's team anymore? Yes, she signed a core qualifying offer and came back for 1 year. She's making $249K. Jesus. I'm not mad at her for signing that offer whatsoever. Especially if that means playing alongside Caitlin Clark at the same time. But since it's almost like they're not necessarily fighting for it to be somebody's team, but it's been Kelsey Mitchell's team for so long. And then Aaliyah Boston came in and made her mark on it. And now everybody feels like it's Caitlin Clark's team, which it probably is. But there's so many moving parts. I don't think that anybody should just take ownership right now. Because, when it goes down, oh, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever did this. But when it goes up, so Natasha Howard, DeWanna Bonner, Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hole, Jaylen Brown, Christy Wallace is suspended for the season. They got Sydney Colston during the off season.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's a really good freaking team at the same time. I just really hope that it can all sort of flow, especially when it comes to the front court, because Natasha Howard in Dallas claimed a lot of playing time. I don't know if that was by design or a personal request or whatever it is, but she had a lot of playing time. So I see her wanting to start, but she'll also fill in that role of the starting four, unless they choose to go DB. But DB can also play the three, or she can come off the bench. Natasha Howard kind of fills that need that they had at the forward that Nalissa Smith kind of, left there, neither here nor there. But yeah, they just have depth on the bench, which I really think is going to be really good for them. Bree Turner, Michaela Timpson, Bree Hall, Lexi Hull, Jaylen Brown. I mean, they have hoopers on their team. I just really want Steph White to be able to handle all of those different playing styles and personalities, because I think they're going to make the playoffs. Not if they are a top 5 team, they're number 5. If they're not a top 5 team, they're number 6. Like, that's just how I see the Indiana Fever right now. Yeah. What do you think about the Fever? Because I'm trying to put it to words and I can't. Now that I look at the roster, like it's tough out here.
I'm overwhelmed because they do have a lot of options, and that's good because last year they definitely struggled to try to force certain players to play a role that they were just not meant to play for the team. I think that the Temi injury last season, I think it was like kind of like at the midway point ish for them, kind of threw them off schematically and in terms of just like how they were trying to play the 4 and 5, and it just wasn't working out for them. But I am so excited to see all of these pieces come together, and I am just going to say this on the record right now. I am purchasing Jaylen Brown most improved player stock right now.
Oh,
I loved her in like her very brief time in Dallas before she unfortunately was out for the season with injury. I was super convinced that she was going to be like an all rookie player. I think that that's an excellent signing for them. Even if it's a training camp contract, I think she's definitely going to compete for a role, especially off their bench. But she's awesome.
You know what I just noticed?
Yeah.
The Fever don't have to make any cuts. They have 12.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
so Jaylen Brown,
quite literally, yeah, they don't have to make any cuts whatsoever. If they make a cut, it'll, you have to have 10 players minimum, but up to 12. So if they make a cut, it might just be to have salary cap room in case something happens later in the season. But honestly, I don't even think they need it because they have a pretty deep bench, in my opinion.
Totally. And I am just trying to sit here and kind of like predict very quickly what their starting 5 would be.
No, I wish y'all could see our
Obviously,
faces right now. Like, this is
yeah,
kind
we're
of
just like,
crazy.
we're both squinting at the screen like, no, like there's no way that this is what they did.
And then
But
Steph White is the head coach.
which is
Uh,
ridiculous. That's such an amazing coaching hire for them, especially. But
Okay,
yeah, it's
I
just a
think I
lot.
have an option.
All right.
Caitlin at the
I'm,
1,
yeah.
Kelsey Mitchell 2.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 is where it gets dicey. Do you want to go Sophie? Do you want to go Dewana? I feel like Lexi is still okay coming off the bench, so you don't even necessarily have to count her. I feel
I
like
would
they'll
probably
go
go Dewana.
Sophie. I feel like they'll
Oh.
go Sophie and bring Dewana off the bench only because
Mm.
last season with Connecticut, Dewana told Steph White that should she be willing to do what the team needed in order to be successful, and that was her coming off the bench. And
Okay.
I don't like to call WNBA players old by any means, but my sister is up there, so she wants to play a more
Mm-hmm.
reduced role, but still come off the bench and hit like some major shots and stuff like that. I feel like she could do that.
Okay. I see the vision. I understand where
Mm-hmm.
you're coming from with that.
So
And
Caitlin,
yeah,
Kelsey, Sophie,
Natasha
Natasha,
Howard.
and
I
then
would go with
Aaliyah
Natasha.
Boston.
I think that that's an excellent starting 5,
And
honestly. And
then
then you still have a wild bench.
yeah, Sydney Colson at the 1, Lexi at the 2, Jalen Brown at the 3, DeWanda
Wow.
Bonner, Demiris Dantas. I'm not mad at anything.
Well, congratulations to the Indiana Fever. Kind of amazing roster construction. I have really no
Yeah,
notes.
I think they probably had one of the most successful off seasons. Like, of course, you could put other personnel to make the roster more competitive or dynamic, but as is, this is already even starting 5. Like the fact that you have options to kind of throw at people, and DB is like a sniper in the background. Like, I don't want any smoke. Well, as an Aces fan, I want all the smoke. As Jasmine Harper, I don't want any whatsoever.
Understandable. All right. I agree. Like it's gonna be fun. And I feel like a lot of the questions like that you have and both of us have honestly are more so just like how creative can you get?
Yeah.
And so it helps that they have Steph White now as their head coach because she could get pretty creative. She's probably gonna be like the best person to have in that situation.
Speaking of creative, who's your second team? Because this was a team that I thought, honestly, there's no way you could lose in the draft for one, but I don't really know how this is going to go in training camp, period.
I agree. So the second team that I picked out was the Washington Mystics. In my opinion, they killed it in the first round, kind of doing what they had to do, which is to say they picked best player available at the spot that they were at, or at the spots, I should say, because they were one of the teams that had a boatload of picks in the first round. So they had 3, 4, and 6. They went Sonia Citron at 3, Kiki Iriafen at 4, and Georgia Amore at 6. I love those picks. I have no qualms with those picks. My question, as it pertains to especially Kiki Iriafen, is how does that work when you also have Shakira Austin, you also have Steph Dolson? I have to check on her hoop stats, but you also had or currently have Emily Engsler. I don't know if they still do. And then,
She's
of
on
course, you
a
still
training camp contract.
and then you have Aaliyah Edwards. So you have a lot of post players. Kiki could definitely stretch the floor a bit more because she has a better, in my opinion, shooting bag, I would say, compared to maybe. Actually, not really. I feel like they have just a bunch of talented bigs on that roster. So that's where my confusion comes in, just because I don't know what that's going to look like in terms of whose minutes are going to be reduced. I think I saw the other day that Steph Dolson posted something where she did not seem pleased with the direction that Washington was going in terms of who they picked, because obviously that kind of leaves her on the outside looking in, possibly. And she's still a very decent post player in the WNBA. She can stretch the floor. She has a 3 ball. But it seems like Washington is trying to kind of usher in this youth movement. And that is not a knock on Steph Dolson. She's not even that old. But compared to these rookies, obviously, like she might be considered more of someone they might consider for the bench, and maybe someone that might get their minutes seen reduced if these rookies are able to show that they could translate their college game to the W quickly. And that might not be the case. Caitlin Clark struggled at the start of her season last year. Angel Reese struggled at the start of her season last year. So it's very possible that Steph Dolson is worried and she'll end up still getting a very decent amount of minutes for Washington. But the post player situation, which is, I guess, the opposite of what's going on in Golden State with too many guards, is very interesting to me. Um, and then from a guard perspective, I was pretty happy because I think that Georgia Amore is a great player to pick up, especially after losing JC Sheldon in the expansion draft. So that made sense to me. Sonia Citron, you can always use a 3-and-D wing. Any team can. So made sense that they would take her as high as they did. And I think she'll be awesome for them in terms of stretching the floor, and they could absolutely use the shooting. But it all goes back to Kiki, Aaliyah Edwards, Shakira Austin, Steph Dolson, Emily Engstler. Like, those are a lot of really decent post player names. So the Mystics have a lot of question marks, or, if I'm maybe not remembering that they don't have to make cuts like Indiana, that would be awesome for them. But it seems like they're going to have some interesting questions about who's going to be getting the nod. Will it be the rookie? Will it be Aaliyah Edwards, who's only in her second year? Is Steph Dolson going to be given those minutes because of her veteran status? So yeah, it's very interesting. I'm very, very curious to see what direction they go in there.
Washington signed 3 or 4 players during the draft.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just asking because they only, per her hoop stats, they only have 8 people on roster. So I don't think they would have to make a cut either if they drafted 3 or 4 players. Again, it's just kind of up to Indiana if they wanted to.
It looks like they drafted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They drafted 7 players.
Oh,
in the draft total and 3 first rounders. So I'm guessing those 3 first rounders make the roster, and then maybe players like Lucy Olson, Zay Green, they have to maybe compete for a spot. But I think those top 3 players still definitely make the team.
Yeah, because in terms of, I kind of share your sentiments with the front court. In terms of backcourt, right now they have, I believe, Jade Melbourne is their PG. When Brittany Sykes isn't running the offense, and Shug Sutton. That's about it, as outside of the people that they just drafted. So Georgia Amore and Sonia Citron are definitely like some good grabs to have. I just don't know. The WNBA plays very fast, and Brittany Sykes is a person that's pretty quick when she has the ball in her hands. So I wonder if she's probably going to run the offense. Her and Jade run the offense for a while so that Amore and Citron can get, kind of acclimated in their first few months. But yeah, I definitely think this team has a lot of question marks as well. And yeah, they're quite the opposite of Golden State in terms of which court they have more players on for sure.
Yeah, I also definitely misspoke. I said JC Sheldon. That is not who I meant. That was taken in the expansion draft. I'm like, no, she was a Dallas wing. That's not the player. But yeah, I think I was thinking of Jade Melbourne, and she's still on the team. So I think that that's solid for them, and they have a really fun backcourt. I'm wondering about those minutes and that distribution of time. But I think that Shakira Austin might be the biggest question mark for them, just because of her injury history. They might not feel comfortable with trusting her as, a part or a big depth piece for the team. They wanted to add somebody like Kiki Iriafen to the team in order to back her up in spots. So that I could see the logic behind it. But
yeah, I mean, I do think these draft picks set them up for the future because Brittany Sykes and Steph Dolson are unrestricted free agents next year. Arguably, the 7 or however many picks that they have coming in will all be signed to rookie contracts. Still have Aaliyah Edwards under contract, rookie scale. Sika Kone, rookie scale. Jay Melbourne, rookie scale. Emily Engstler, training camp / rookie scale. So I think they're doing very team-friendly deals and trying to aim for youth over the next, I'll probably say, after next year, after this season, excuse me, they'll definitely lean into their youth a little bit more. But I want them to understand the value of a veteran. Like, I understand you moved on from Ariel Atkins and everything, but Brittany Sykes and Steph Dolson, I would probably try to keep them around as long as they would want to be in Washington, honestly.
Yeah. And I would say definitely, especially Brittany Sykes, who I think that that could be her team. It is her team in my mind going into
No,
this
it is.
season.
It's her team. Yeah, it's
And
definitely her
so
team.
I think leaning into her skill set is going to be best for them, and letting her stabilize the rookies, the many, many rookies that are on that team, is going to be ideal for them. And I'll throw it back to you for the final team. Very surprising that you picked this team, but what is the last team that you picked to look at their training camp roster for?
Yes, so we're definitely hitting the hour mark now. Otherwise, we would have been done. But I got a question on my Twitter from B. Schwartz, who was asking about the Las Vegas Aces and their kind of training camp contract if a certain player by the name of Kia Stokes would make it out alive. And I thought it would be a good time to kind of dive into a top team. We didn't really go in depth with Minnesota or New York, Seattle as well. So I felt like Vegas is fair to assess, especially since Kelsey Plumbla, she was, arguably she was like a part of the core of the Aces. And while you still have Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young, and Asia Wilson, Kelsey Plum was, you just need a dog on the court. You just need somebody like who can just go out there, either get you a bucket, take a bite out of somebody, get the energy in the game back up. Like Kelsey was just really that player for the Aces. And I'm definitely gonna miss her. But now we have to focus on the future and what that looks like. So Ace, I have a question for you. We could just go back and forth on this section since we're both talking about the Aces. Does Asia Wilson have enough help in the paint? So this kind of ties into Kia Stokes. Elizabeth Kitley is also active this season after being injured and sitting out last year. And Cheyenne Parker-Tyus, who is pregnant at the moment, but says that she'll be ready in about 2 to 3 months, I believe, into the season. Do you think that Asia Wilson has enough help going into training camp and possibly for the season?
No, get her help. She needs more help. And I was hoping that they would really go all in on trying to get her help this offseason. And I feel like they didn't sign several players that I was really anticipating on them to be in on.
Kalani Brown. Kalani Brown. You should have been a Las Vegas Aces, but I understand, sister.
100%. Kalani Brown. Bree Jones was out there. She was a free agent. She was lurking around. Aces didn't sign her. BG, another free agent that went to Atlanta, gone. Who would have been perfect for Vegas. She has the resume. She has the credentials. Get her into Vegas, and they did not sign her. I didn't mind the Cheyenne Parker-Tyus signing, but, obviously she's going to be out. Liz Kitley, I have a lot of high hopes for. I think that she will develop into a really good big in the league. And I thought that was a great pick last year, and I still think it's a great pick. She kind of slots in as their first rounder from this year, or just, as their pick from this year that they didn't have. So that should be interesting to see how she develops. But I don't love the idea that Asia is being backed up by a rookie and Kia Stokes. And that is no shade at all to Kia Stokes' capabilities. But last season, she was just not able to back her up well. I hope that she's able to get back into the mode that she was in during at least even 2023 is the most recent season. I feel like I really enjoyed her work.
Yeah.
But that is one area that I'm actually really surprised that they didn't try to really load up on in free agency. And every time I read without Kelsey Plum, it blows my mind because I'm like, no, she's not gone. She's an ace. What are you talking about?
It's so different. It's so different. I seen this video of her. I think what's the famous road in it couldn't have been Beverly Hills. Maybe Rodeo. I think she was out
Rodeo
shopping
Drive
with somebody. and
Mm-hmm.
somebody walked up to her and were like, "Are you famous? Like, you look famous." She was like, "No, I'm just, out here in LA." And I'm like, "Sister, you don't belong here. You belong
That's
in
not your
Vegas
home.
with the bright lights, the casinos. Listen, this is where you belong." I do think one thing that I think we don't necessarily view Asia as a 5. Well, of course she's a 5. That's the role that she plays. But
Mm-hmm.
Asia's skill level is almost at like a 4 at this point. So I feel like there is nothing wrong with supplying help at the 5 specifically. Play 2 centers if you need to call them, like that's what it is. But she needs somebody next to her who can keep up with her and also draw attention off of her. And I don't think that, for one, Vegas doesn't have a GM. Nikki Vargas is making all the decisions right now in conjunction with Becky Hammond. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that that wasn't the right decision, but at the same time, it's showing in the roster construction. Queen Egbo and Crystal Bradford have training camp contracts. I'm very eager to see if either of them make it out and onto the roster. Queen Egbo was with the team for a little bit last season, right? Was she on like a hardship contract towards the end of the year?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can see her potentially like coming back, and of course, Meg kind of she operates as like a stretch 3/4 who gets out there and shoot, but that's still not enough to help Asia. Chelsea Gray has help, she has
Mm-hmm.
Jewel, she has Jackie. Why not give Asia some of that same support in the backcourt? The first 2 seasons under Becky Hammond, she didn't play anybody but 6 players anyway. So why not just go out your way to find that 5th player who can just keep up and hang with Asia? I just really hope next season is different. And from the looks of it, everybody is an unrestricted free agent except for the draft picks. So Asia, if you leave, sister, I'm going wherever you go. Go somewhere that can get you some help, or tell the aces you need a girl next to you who could hang with the best. Because I can't take another season of this. Like, y'all don't remember last year when Asia was actually yelling at her team, which Asia
Yeah.
doesn't yell at people in the first place. But like, she needs that help. She needs that support. And I think, I'm not going to say you're wasting her years by not providing her that, because she has 3 MVPs and 2 titles. But you don't want to miss an opportunity for y'all to excel or to get another championship, or for Asia to be at her best, because you don't have the piece that you need next to her.
100%. I can't imagine Asia playing anywhere but Vegas. I'm sorry. I feel like
if there's a South Carolina team, I guess I'm going with Asia. I don't know.
You cannot see Jasmine, but she has been stressed since I said Aces in training camp. So very stressful topic. Understandably stressful, because this is questionable.
We were looking at the Indiana Fever with like so much like enthusiasm, but happy confusion. This Aces roster makes me want to cry.
It's wild.
It makes me want to cry right now.
They'll be okay. They're going to be fine. There's always a trade deadline. They could make something happen there, Do I hate the idea of them punting this year? Yes, 100%. I don't think they are punting it. They went out and got Jewel Lloyd. That was a huge trade for them.
Yeah, definitely.
They're not very clearly giving up on this year at all. But they need to fortify that bench so much more than it currently is, especially with the loss of Sid Colson. Like, that is, I think, a much more significant departure than people realize when it pertains to this bench, because she was definitely the energy, the glue off the bench, and now she's gone. So a lot of question marks.
Our entire bench has basically left except Kirsten Bell, who I'm surprised they protected in the expansion draft, but we don't have to get into it.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Yeah, we don't have to get into it, I promise.
We're over an hour. Oh man. If only this podcast was happening during that, because that would have been just Jasmine's therapy.
I would have crashed out on this podcast.
But very curious to see what they do. But those are the teams. Those are the teams that really pique our interest in terms of training camp and what they're going to do over these next few weeks as we approach the start of preseason finally, the start of the actual WNBA season, which I'm so excited to just see things start because hypotheticals are cool. I just want to see it, laid out on the court.
Yeah.
But yeah. And are there any other final thoughts on any of these teams or the draft or anything else that we talked about today?
Kind of like you, I'm just excited for the start. I don't think I've been excited for the start of a season like I had this one. Like, I think 2023 was probably like the last time I was this excited. Last year was cool, but it wasn't like this. These rosters are crazy. But I appreciate it though, because it's showing that the W can be just as entertaining, if not more, than, the other major sports leagues out there. I consider the W part of a major sports league or a professional women's basketball organization. So why not? But I think the WNBA has a capability to compete with the best of them. And I think that this season, I need to see like 10 million in viewership. I need to see people advocating for more games, for more expansion, more ownership groups coming out and trying to find different bids. Like the fact that places like Minnesota and Indiana have WBA teams, and some of these other like major markets like Florida doesn't have a WNBA team. Women's basketball is very prominent in Tennessee, doesn't have a WNBA team. I think we're trending in the right direction for some of the things that everybody has been hoping for over the past few decades to finally come to fruition. So, yeah, I'm just excited for the start of the season.
Yeah, this is the last year with 13 teams. Next year we go to 15, which is wild, with Portland and Toronto coming in. Toronto Tempo and Portland, whatever name
we don't even know yet.
But yeah, I'm just as excited, and I'm ready to start thinking about way too early predictions for awards, first team W, all rookie teams, rookie of the year, things of that nature. But for now, we're happy to have discussed the training camps and also the WNBA draft. And we thank you guys so much again for tuning in to listen to Sideline Sisters. We really appreciate it. If you have any feedback, comments, questions, like Jasmine got a question, we were able to talk about it for a huge majority of the last part of this podcast because it was so intriguing. So any questions or anything like that, please let us know, and please share and subscribe and rate and just tell everybody that you know that we're talking about the WNBA and that they should listen to us talk about it. And that's it.
All right. See you next episode.